It's different because it's based on an objective truth, which is data. Of course, one can argue that
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning into Notes of Design. To help support our mission spread knowledge, we have a very special guest on today's episode. Let's welcome Dr. Kirell Benzi, who is a data artist, speaker, and data visualization lecturer. Presently, he is working at Akino as a head of research. His expertise in software engineering and creative coding have allowed him to design for new methods especially dedicated to his passion for data. Consequently, his work has been shown in various museums like Art Lab, Swiss National Museum, newspapers and magazines, in across more than 100 websites in 10 languages. To name few, we have like TechRadar, CodeDesign, PhysicsOrg, Wise, and Digital Trends. And he was also been a keynote speaker at various occasions like TEDx. On this episode, Dr. Kirell had shared wonderful insights on data art and what exactly is data art and how one can create emotions from data. We also spoke on the various aspects of data visualization and as it's the first step in data art and how do you choose a form of visualization to further proceed with your data art. Also focusing on storytelling with data art. With that said, I have an announcement to be made. As you guys have requested for a design publication wherein we can read different stories from designers around the world, we have launched another non-profit initiative under the Notes of Design campaign wherein you can now read handpicked curated stories from designers around the world. The link to Design War publication has been attached in the show notes. Hope you guys enjoy this episode, and on every Friday we release a new episode with a new creative leader around the world to help you understand different topics related to design. So don't forget to tune in into Notes of Design on every Friday. Said with that, happy designing everyone. Hi Kirell, welcome to Nodes of Design. It's a pleasure hosting you today on our show.
Hi, thank you very much for having me. It's a great pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much, Kirell. So how was your day going?
Well, here in France, we are in the post-confinement period, so people are starting to go out, but it's not really, I would say, back to normal. So we have more time for ourselves and to work on projects that we like.
That's totally correct. So, Kirell, if you could give a brief about yourself to our audience out there.
I'm a Dr. Kirell Benzi. I'm head of research at Akino, which is a tech company in France, in Paris. But I'm also, and foremost, I would say, a professional data artist. And if you're wondering what a data artist is, well, you come to the right place, I think.
Thank you so much, Kirell. So let's start with your journey into design, and if you want to share like how did you came into this visualization and data art, and what was your journey and what are your tips to the beginners that you want to suggest?
Okay, so it's really interesting, I think, for me. So I started making digital art as a teenager, even like earlier. But I put this aside as I went following a scientific career. I did my PhD in data science. And I realized that when I wanted to explain what I was working on, I was lacking some of the visual aids or tools to convey to the people asking me, what are you working on, for instance? So I realized that, okay, maybe I should learn more about this very interesting field of data visualization and see if I could use some of these tools to explain scientific stuff. And funny thing, I realized that I could also push data viz to another field and, go back to my original passion and merge the two of them together. And this is how I really became, say, a data artist. So if you want to start in data art, I would suggest that you first get more comfortable with data. So you would need at some point to do visual or programming at some point, right? To be able to master changing a data set, downloading it, transforming it into something different, and also learn all the software and the tools to make it happen, I would say. So start with the basic data, like really understand the tech jargon, all the different techniques, the libraries, and hopefully you get there.
Thank you so much, Kirell. So in specific to design, like any general suggestion that you want to give to audience out there, like people who are really young but are very passionate and creative to get into this field?
Yes. So to be an artist or a designer, you really need to have a keen sense of know how to basically read like an image or design anything. So what I do actually every day, I spend almost 1 hour reading I have, a Feedly, so I have a feed of, 150 different sources. And I spend every day an hour just catching up with Twitter, with everything that's happening in this space. DataViz, for instance, and the DataViz community has a Slack channel, and we have 11,000 members now. It's called Data Visualization Society. And you can join here. It's free. And you have like ton of people like sharing tips, explaining their design, critiquing, the different visualization that they did. And I think to me, this is a constant source of first inspiration and also learning opportunities.
Thank you so much, Kirell. We discussed about data art now. So let's talk on what exactly is data art and how do you create emotions from data?
Data art is, I would say it's a new artistic movement. So, which is in the broad category of new media art, if you are familiar with this. And why is it different? It's not just digital art. It's different because it's based on an objective truth, which is data. So it's, of course, one can argue that is it really like data can be manipulated, truncated, so it's not really objective. Okay, I would agree with that. But compared to regular art, or it's a subjective vision of the artist alone, here you have a grander truth, which is the data set that you are working with, right? So if you talk, for instance, about Wikipedia, then your data set is Wikipedia. So people can edit, Wikipedia. And so you cannot really do whatever you want with it. You have to, if you want to be true to the data, you can have abstract visuals, but it has to reflect what's happening somehow in the data. And this is, I think, one of the core distinction between data art and, for instance, generative art, which is also very popular. Generative art using basically the same techniques, because you're going to use the same algorithms, the same tools. But in generative art, the goal is to create emotions. It's mostly based out of randomness. So you create algorithms that, run forever and they change over time. But there's no deeper and there's meaning to the piece. In data art, the cool thing about this is, to me, it's a way to talk about the scientific principles behind them. So you look at the piece, hopefully you find it aesthetically pleasing, because to me, this is the entry point for you to, to get interested in the piece. And when you read the description, then you realize that, this is based on a real data set. So maybe I'm going to learn more about the data set itself and the scientific techniques that we have that were used to create this data set. This is like it's a quick or long definition of data art, but I think it's interesting to point out how it's different from the rest.
Thank you, Cyril, for breaking it down and making it so easy for us to understand. So what is your creative process in making this data art?
Okay, so I would say two things. So it's, of course, as it's a design process. So it's going to be iterative, right? You have to go over again. This doesn't really change. It's art, right? You scrap it again and you try to do it over. But for me, there's two sources of inspiration. Either I want to work on a specific topic. For instance, I'd say global warming or sea level. Okay, so this is a topic. And now I would find, what is the data set that would convey the information that I want to put visually? So this is one approach. The other approach would be you work on the technique itself. For instance, I'm experimenting a lot with generative AI stuff right now. And now, once I master the technique, I would say, what could I represent as a message? So now you start from the technique and then you find your way backwards to find like a powerful message. And of course, it has to be linked with data. So you have these two approaches, basically.
Thank you so much, Kirell. So coming to the data visualization part, as it's the first step in creating data art. So how do you choose to visualize and build a narrative story around the art that you are representing?
As in any data science project, I start to do basic, ugly data viz. But they are really helpful to understand what's happening in the data. So you would start with the regular bar chart, line chart, histograms, and things like this. No pie chart, though. This is like my tip to you. Never use a pie chart. It's really bad. And I'm going to tell you why it's bad. Because we as humans don't have a good perception of angles. So when you do slices in the pie, we have a hard time deciphering with it whether this slice is 42% or 53%. It's very difficult to see, right? So please don't use any pie chart unless you do data art. And the cool thing about data art is because the goal is to put forward emotions, then you can break the rules, I would say. But going back to your question, so I start with ugly visuals. And to me, when I do data art, the most important thing is the message. So now I'm going to tailor the visualization to push a message. And the message could be twofold. It could be you want to talk about the data set, but at the same time, you want to reflect of what it means. For instance, if you work on social media, you make a piece out of Twitter information. So what it means for us to be connected like this. And what I like about the data viz in general is that you have a way of seeing complexity, which is very difficult for our brain to process. If I'm telling you, can you visualize in your brain right now 55,000 tweets connected together? It's impossible.
Yes.
It's impossible. So the idea with data art is that it gives you a snapshot or like a gut feeling about like a very, very complex phenomenon. So I gradually start from very low res, ugly visualizations to something which makes sense and it's powerful in terms of a message. So you gradually build up.
So how do you put this storytelling factor into the art that you are creating then?
So the storytelling can come. So when you do data art, usually you have a description. It's an art piece. So the storytelling would be either in the piece itself, hopefully this is like the emotional part, but I would say that 50% of the work comes from not the description. I would say like every artist would say that, right? You don't understand me. I'm like, no, it's not like this. It's not like no one understands me. I'm the artist. No. But in data art, because it's based on a real data set, it's important for the audience to read the description. Otherwise, you can because it's abstract, you like the colors, you like the shape, but you're missing half of the piece, which is, but this visual that you see is about pedestrian tracking. So I'm giving you examples of things that I did.
Yes.
And so what does it mean to track people? Why was it useful to do that? It was in a train station and we wanted to make construction work. And because it's very expensive, you need to anonymously track people so that you would understand where to, widen the platform and things like this. So there's a reason why the data exists, and it's our job to make it, interesting to people. So the storytelling comes from the data always, and it's written in below, I would say.
Thank you so much, Kirell. So Kirell, if you could tell us what are the new trends that are coming in market which are related with AI and art both together?
Yes, so we have this new, I would say, also artistic movement, which is also related to data art, I would say. It's a blend between data art and generative art, which is called AI art. So using artificial intelligence, which I don't really like, so I would say machine learning. Right? This is my scientific part talking here, but there's nothing intelligent in what we do. It's just algorithm that we design and it's a machine. But the interesting part for art is that because you model complexity, at some point, the machine, you have a hard time tracking what's really happening in the network if you create a neural network. But you know exactly how you build it. It's just it has so many inputs that it's difficult to keep track. It's like saying, a computer is intelligent. No, it's not. The CPU is doing billions of operations per second. You cannot keep track of each one of them, but you understand how it works. So there's nothing intelligent about AI, but it's a great tool for artists because now you can train on a very big data set, for instance, with images. And then you can ask the network, your algorithm, to synthesize new images. And of course, you apply your own style or parameters. So this movement is also called neural art, because most of the stuff is based on neural networks. And you have two main categories here. One is called neurostyle, or the idea is you take, for instance, the image of an artist that you like, and you can stylize your image, right? So you apply the style from a texture from one image to your own face, for instance. Google did this in an app, and also before there was Prisma, the app that did it. So this is called neurostyle, and it's a ton of research going in this direction. And you also have more generative art based on GANs, on generative adversarial networks. So here, basically the idea is you train a network to synthesize, so you have two networks. One generates new images, and the second one tries to check whether the image that you create is fake or true to the original dataset. And if at some point, because you train the network, then the discriminator cannot really tell the difference between the real image and the fake one. So now you're a great forger and you can synthesize like realistic images. And the cool thing about this is that if you train on 1,000 different objects or animals, you can start to blend them together. So I can synthesize images saying, okay, give me 40% of cat, 50% of dog, and the 10% of I don't know, a bottle or anything, or a keyboard. And then you create some very is like weird shapes. They kind of look familiar, but at the same time, it's weird for your brain. And it's really interesting to observe how people like react to this and also make data visualizations out of this, because now you are in this uncanny valley, right? Or you don't really know, okay, it seems very familiar, but because you know all the bits of the piece, but then when you look at it, it doesn't look like anything you know.
Exactly.
So I think this area is really, really interesting to explore as an artist, and also as a way to talk about machine learning, to talk about artificial intelligence, I would say in quotes, so that you understand that it's nothing like it's just a machine, but it's a very interesting tool.
Thank you so much, Kirell, for explaining us this. And as a part of our conclusion, now I would love to ask you to recommend any of your 3 favorite reads.
Yeah. So I would, for this pick, I chose 2 books in data viz and 1 book in more, I would say, general advice for designers. So the first one would be Data Visualization by Kirk, which is like a standard book in the field. And it's gradually, you have everything you need from the design point of view, with the foundations, defining the data viz, then the workflow that you need to have to create a data viz, then how do you formulate your brief, how do you talk to stakeholders, who to look for. So this is a really cool book. The second one that I have is called Design for Information, and by Isabel Meirelles. I'm not really sure how to pronounce her name. Maybe she's French, so it would be Isabel Meirelles, but I'm not sure. And it's also very, the 2 books are really good because you have tons of data viz, also historical data viz back from the 19th century up to now. So it's a cool way to get inspired and to see how the field evolved over time. Plus you have some very cool principles of how the brain perceives information and things like this. So I think this would be a very great add if if you're curious about the field. And the last book would be, maybe you designers know it. It's called Win Without Pitching by Blair Enns, which is a classic, but it's a manifesto. So it's a very small book, but I think it's really important because it tells us that you should not try to, undercut and lower your price every time you want to work for a client, and you basically be selective and be a specialist, hoping that people will come to you and you are the expert, instead of trying to appeal to everyone by doing website, logo, shoe design, anything. Doesn't really work that way, because you're gonna find someone which is always lower price than you, and you're not gonna be able to live. This book, Win Without Pitching, is a great I think introduction to just have this mindset and to remember that we do great work and we should be more specialists than generalists.
Thank you so much, Kirell, for sharing your reads and so much of great knowledge with us. We would love to host you again on our show.
Thank you very much for interviewing me. It was a great pleasure, and if you want to come invite me again, it would be my honor.